I am back. It is 7:22. I am ready for chapter 32. I needed a break from this book. This book is phenomenal, but man, it is very detailed and seriously lengthy. But I am loving it. I am now ready. Chapter 32 is DNA, the cart before the horse. There we are, right there. Again, I will say, if you are just hopping on and hearing me start to read this, chapter 32 of The Politics of Murder, don't start here. I have a playlist of every chapter prior to this. Please go to my playlist and start at the beginning, hit play all, and enjoy every chapter prior to this, and then get here. Don't start at chapter 32. This book is not to be missed. It's phenomenal. Please go enjoy all the previous chapters before you come here, and then listen to chapter 32. This book is a true story, and not one to be missed, okay? Let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. Here we go. Chapter 32. DNA, the cart before the horse. Since the state police lab in Massachusetts wasn't certified to do DNA testing, selected specimens were sent to Cellmark Diagnostics in Maryland for analysis. The specimens were tested by Melissa Weber at Cellmark. Instead of putting Weber on the stand, Riley called Dr. Jennifer Reynolds, the reviewer of Weber's work. The lab required that a second person review the entire contents of the case folder, read all the laboratory reports, and sign the report. It was not clear at the time why Riley chose to put the reviewer and not the chemist on the stand first. Normally, the chemist would testify first, describing each test and why it is done. Then, they would testify about the results obtained from their test in the questioned sample, how it was matched or failed to match a known sample to which the results were being compared. Putting the supervisor on first made it an impossibly complex subject, even more muddled. Why? Because she couldn't testify about the actual testing done. She could only testify that she reviewed the work someone else did and approved it. It is impossible to convey just how impenetrable the testimony about DNA sounds to a non-scientist. Dr. Reynolds went on for at least 20 minutes about talking about chromosomes and double helixes and bases and pairing, and all of it was information that could only be fully understood by a fellow scientist. I would say yes, because it's a little much for me. I'm just reading the book. The judicial system doesn't take into account the complexity of information the jury is required to comprehend and apply to the facts of a case. It encourages jurors to tune out the actual details of the testimony and rely entirely on the conclusions of the expert witnesses without understanding the process by which they came to that conclusion. Wow, they got this guy's life in their hands. To simplify, here is a short synopsis of DNA technology. In 1997, there were 2 tests that could be performed to forensically identify a person's unique and individual DNA. The first one, RFLP, Restriction Fragment Length Polymorphism testing, a technology in use in the scientific community for about 20 years that was used routinely for pre-diagnosis and cancer diagnosis and other types of biomedical research. The second is PCR. I'm gonna probably say this wrong. Hello. I'm not gonna sleep. That's a very odd question, Joe. I'm reading a book. You can't read a book when you're sleeping. Thank you. PCR is polymerase, I don't know if I'm saying that right, polymerase chain reaction. Testing had been around since about 1985. It was the most widely used test used for medical diagnosis. PCR testing was much more sensitive than RFLP, and it did not require a large sample in order to be accurate. PCR testing is used only to exclude a possible source, which it does with 100% accuracy. Since PCR tests cannot include a person with any certainty, The only reliable result is whether or not that person can be excluded as a contributor to the specimen. Over the past 20 years, far more accurate and sophisticated DNA testing has been developed, thank God. The FBI discontinued RFLP analysis in 2000 in favor of STR-13 multiplexing testing. Moreover, mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, can now identify DNA recovered from damaged, degraded, or very small biological samples. Thank the Lord. That development came too late for Eddie, though. RFLP testing was used in his 1997 case. This test compares the banding patterns in the DNA as well as the size of the bands. If the evidence sample and the known sample bands appear identical in their sizes, fall within a strict match criteria, then they are a statistical and visual match. Banding matches look like this. I'm going to show you the picture. I realize it's backwards. You could certainly take a screenshot and flip it. That's wild. The matches are compared with 5 separate regions to determine how frequently in the population this banding pattern with the matching size would occur. Cellmark did RFLP testing on 4 evidence samples and 2 known controls, Janet Downing and Eddie O'Brien. The 4 samples were a swab from inside the inside front door, item number 12. The results showed that the darkest and primary banding pattern on item 12, inner side of the inside front door, matched exactly the banding patterns of Eddie O'Brien. The frequency of finding another person who matched exactly that banding pattern of Eddie O'Brien in the Caucasian population would be 1 in 180 million individuals. A second banding pattern detected matched Downing. A cutting from the pink dress on the clothesline in the basement, item number 38, the banding pattern on the dress, item number 38, matched exactly Eddie O'Brien's banding pattern. The frequency in the Caucasian population would be 1 in 180 million individuals. The second banding pattern detected matched that of Janet Downing. A swab from the cellar exit door, item number 42, the cellar exit door swab, item number 42, matched exactly Janet Downing's banding pattern. The frequency of matching her banding pattern to another in the Caucasian population would be 1 in 3.2 billion individuals. A swab from the right door jamb of the dining room, item number 14. The swab from the right door jamb of the dining room, from the dining room revealed only 1 banding pattern that matched Eddie O'Brien's banding pattern. The frequency was 1 in 180 million. It was the only DNA banding pattern detected in the sample. Cellmark did PCR testing on 10 evidence samples and compared them with 2 known samples, Janet Downing and Eddie O'Brien. 3 genetic sites are examined to see how often the base repeats itself. Finally, they look to see the gender location to see if the DNA is male or female. Cutting labeled, quote, sneakers suspect, quote, is item number 1. Sidewalk bloodstains, group number 27, item number 66. Sidewalk bloodstains, group number 20, item 69. Bloodstain extract on inner front door, item number 13. The result for these 4 samples was virtually identical. Janet Downing could be excluded from all of the samples, although Eddie O'Brien could not be excluded. 1 in every 270 Caucasian males would match all of the types found in these samples. Thread from the metal piece on the 3rd stair, item number 21, the thread referred to the actual size of the sample tested. It was as small as a thread of clothing. Wow. The result for this sample showed a mixture of 2 people, a male and a female. Janet Downing could not be excluded as the primary donor. Eddie O'Brien was excluded, so it wasn't Eddie. There was one genetic marker present in the sample that neither the victim nor Eddie's DNA contained, so it's hers and somebody else's. Therefore, the other DNA detected on that sample is from an unidentified male person, not Eddie. That is crazy. Hi, Timothy. Doctor, I can't, that's crazy. Riley asked, what are the possible sources of that 12 in the T-pox marker then? Dr. Reynolds responded, I have no idea. I don't know. That is nuts. Right hand and left hand fingernail scrapings of Janet Downing, no item number. The primary source was consistent with Downing's sample. Eddie was excluded as a contributor to the sample. A secondary source of DNA detected was male. But besides that, we can't draw any conclusions. So again, Eddie is excluded. Male, under her fingernails, but not Eddie. That is mental. The wooden post in the cellar, item number 70, this gave us a mixture where the types observed were consistent with both types observed from Edward O'Brien's sample and Downing's sample. The primary contributor would not be determined, so they still don't know. They don't know who it is. In summary, there were 4 distinct places where Eddie's DNA was detected. The inside of the inner front door, the door jamb, the entryway to the dining room, the wooden post in the cellar, and on one of the pieces of clothing, the pink dress on the clothesline in the basement. All of this was consistent with the account that Eddie had given Dr. Spears in 1995 about what happened at 71 Hamlet Street on the night of the murder. Eddie did touch Downing's body to turn her over to see if she was alive. He did close the inner front door when ordered to do so by Downing's attacker. He did hit the post at the bottom of the cellar stairway, and he did push the clothes away on his way out of the backyard. Clearly, I mean, obviously his DNA is going to be everywhere. Doesn't mean he killed her. Oh my God, this is mental. Eddie told Spears that the outer cellar door was already open when he ran out of it. The lack of any of his blood, fingerprints, or DNA on this door is also consistent with his original story. The jury had not yet heard any information about Eddie's presence at the crime scene. They did not hear Spears or see his videotape interview. His testimony and the tape were excluded. Oh my head, I hate this judge. Were excluded by the judge because the sodium amytal test, like the lie detector test, had not yet been generally accepted as reliable in the scientific community. Without any information about how Eddie's blood came to be at the scene of the crime, the case against him at this juncture appeared quite damning. Would the jurors be able to keep open minds until the evidence had been heard? Would they remember the bloody fingerprint in the powder room that did not belong to Eddie, and the bloody palm print on the opposite door jamb to the dining room that did not belong to either Eddie or Downing? Would they remember that the hilt of the knife, item number 21, and under Janet Downing's fingernails, there was a secondary source of male DNA that could not be identified? Would they remember there were unidentified fingerprints at the scene that the police made no attempt, this kills me, the police made no attempt to identify? What are we paying the police for? What are we paying judges and tax dollars hard at work, people? The defense was still a day away from presenting any evidence. The jury had been listening to the case for 7 full days now. The last several witnesses were all forensic experts. The jurors could not take notes. I need a second. The jurors couldn't take notes, and they couldn't talk to one another about the case at all. How much were they expected to retain before they began to forget some of the evidence? Hi, Dave. Dave, have you ever heard of a case where jurors are not allowed to take notes? This is complete bullshit to me. This is mental. What? You can't take notes? What? Oh, so we're just supposed to have like the best memories on the planet? Hi, I have MS. Can I take notes? No, you can't. Awesome, great. I'd like to go home then. What is that? All right, chapter 33. What is that? You can't take notes? Hi, come be a juror. Sit there and shut up. No notes, no nothing. Sit there. I want to take notes. I'm just reading a book. I want to take notes. It's still all in the book right in front of me. I still want to take notes. Crazy sauce. Okay. Chapter 33. All will not be revealed. All will not be revealed. Dave, look at that. Did you see somebody just ask me if I could sleep on the live today? He wants to see me sleep on the live. Hi, creepy. A little bit. No thanks. Chapter 33. All will not be revealed. Melissa Weber had been at Cellmark 8 years by the time she testified to Eddie O'Brien's trial. She was the one who did the actual testing on all the evidence submitted. I doubt she tested that. She says she tested it. Most of the stuff didn't get tested. That's disclaimer. That's me saying I doubt it, okay? She was the one who did the actual testing on all evidence submitted. If the jury expected that she was going to describe all of these tests and what the results revealed, they were either sadly disappointed or happily relieved. All District Attorney Tom Riley did with this witness was to have her identify large charts and ask her if they represented her findings in the case accurately. Excuse me, he then asked that the large charts be admitted into evidence. Bob George correctly objected. Bob George, I still can't get over the dude's name, who has 2 first names as a name. Okay? At sidebar, Riley almost pleaded with the judge to allow them into evidence because the jury was permitted to have chalks in the jury room. These were like chalks, he responded. But chalks are not evidence and could not be considered by the jury as evidence. Judge James McDaniel reminded him they were hearsay. They were hearsay. And if George objected, which he did, then he had to rule them inadmissible because they were hearsay. The judge asked why Riley didn't simply have her testify to the information. Riley mumbled an acceptance of the judge's suggestion, but did not elicit any testimony from the witnesses regarding the actual tests. His reasons weren't immediately apparent. He had gotten everything he needed from Jennifer Reynolds, Weber's supervisor. Even Judge McDaniel expressed his opinions that Reynolds should have testified after Weber, not before. Riley clearly wanted this witness on and off the stand in a hurry. There had to be a reason. Was he worried what Weber might reveal communications? Was he worried what Weber might reveal communications she'd had with him directly about aborting the testing of some evidence? She was, after all, the chemist he instructed to suspend all further DNA analysis on the hilt of the knife for an entire year. You can't make this crap up, people. Perhaps he was worried about George uncovering the reason he ordered all further testing halted, because the first extraction showed that Eddie's DNA did not appear on the hilt of the alleged murder weapon. If that was his thinking, he needn't have worried. Although Bob George had all 3 written reports, he never asked. Bob George, you big baboon. He never asked. I can't. Excuse me. He never asked why all the testing had been suspended for an entire year at Riley's request, because that would actually mean he's doing his job. Bob George didn't do his job. George was clearly poorly prepared. I'm going to insert a word here. He was an asshat. Moving on. How could he understand such complicated new evidence? One would assume that he was a lawyer? No. He was a ding-dong. The hilt and the fingernail scraping results had come in just before the trial started without the guidance and advice of his own DNA expert? How could he properly question Riley's expert or capitalize on the fact that Eddie had been excluded as the primary source and that the secondary male DNA was not identified on the hilt of the knife, the alleged murder weapon, if he didn't understand what the DNA results actually meant? He has a brain. Presumably, one would assume. He stands upright. He walks. uses the bathroom. These are my words. Disclaimer. You would think, you know, but clearly he doesn't understand what the DNA results actually mean. So why bother to ask? No. George's failure to secure his own expert witness to interpret the results and to obtain independent blood and DNA analysis eventually played a huge role in costing Eddie O'Brien his freedom. Good Christ. The ineffective assistance of counsel is not necessarily better than no counsel at all. It can be worse. Eddie would never be able to get a new trial on appeal with regard to this particular evidence. In order to be granted a new trial, Eddie would have to prove that there was new evidence that did not exist at the time of trial, or there was evidence that was not available to him at the time of his trial. All the DNA evidence was known and available to the defense attorney, Bob Idiot George. That's his new name. I'm calling him Bob Idiot George. I'm sorry. The only time Eddie had the opportunity to challenge this evidence was at trial. George failed to do what was minimally necessary in order to interpret and properly address the Commonwealth's DNA evidence. He failed to get any independent DNA analysis of his own, even though 1/2 of all the samples were reserved for him to do just that. I want to find this man. I don't know where he is. I want to find him and take this book to him, smile, say hello, and bop him with the book gently on the head and ask him if he realizes what a ding-dong he is. I just do. I'm not going to do that, but it's what I want to do. It's what I want to do. There it is. I said it. All right. 2 chapters and I got to take a pause. I got to take a beat. We're going to just put a pin in this right here, right there. I'm going to take a beat because Bob George, I need a beat. I'll be back, okay?